Good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you watch this. This morning I am going to talk briefly about justice. Alright, let me tell you what justice is not, and then you'll have a better idea of what it could be. Justice is not punishment, right? So it's all behaviour based, right? If you remember to look at the behaviour, not the process, you'll do really well. Now that can be applied to prisons, schools, general regulation of society, just about out that involves people, or behaviours. Because there's behaviours of other things, animals, the behaviour of process, how it works, right? Why it works that way. Simplify to understand the basics. When things seem really complicated, simplify it. Something people don't do. They try and run around complication and things just get more complicated. And then they wonder why they're confused. Well, if I was to delve into code, right, to complications, to confuse, I'm going to get into that. Right? Positive, negative, there's your table. Right? If there's a negative behaviour, right? Now the thing is, you've got to remember that we are all involved, no matter whether you think you're on the good side, whether you think somebody has had a negative behaviour and that you're there to correct it. Well, no matter what your role is, if you add a punishment, you have added a negative. Therefore, the punishments, right, are negative behaviours, and you will just add more negatives, which will, that should be a straight line, which will tip the balance towards negative. It will. What you have to do is, where there is a negative behaviour, there's two choices. The negative behaviour is already registered on the eternal register. It's there, right? You add a positive behaviour from that individual. You can't remove it off the register because it's been done. Right? What you can do is to stop it from adding more negatives. The individual is by learning how not to do the negatives again, how to find your balance. There's a good one. It's just come to me, as the things do. Alright. You know, in the arcades, you drop a penny in, and it's got them pins, right? and it bounces and you're not really sure where it's going to land, and you've got to land in a particular area to win a prize, right? Well, that's a little bit like these are the lines, right, that your penny's got to land on to win a prize, right? The positive, right? Bullseye, right? It's got to land on a particular. Well, I've got a bullseye, right? Say out of the black, into the red. There's nothing in this game for two in a bed. Uh, yeah, so you want a positive result. The thing is, with how the universe works and the balance of the universe, it's very clever, right? Is that negatives are generated within those who have the capacity to understand more than one side. There are also situations, because there's more than just one person, right, where challenges in life are generated as well, because this is a learning place. We're here to learn, right? When you're not here, there's the other side, which is process, which is a continuation of all sorts of data. But here, you can learn. It's the reflection, it's the place of reflection. So keeping things simple. Don't advertise the negatives. There's on the news. Show you something about the news, right? No, actually, I won't. Right, yeah, alright, I won't do that. Yeah. Right. If you advertise a negative, you're duplicating it. You've been duped. When you're being duped, you've been conned, right? You've been conned, right? So the thing is, the way for things to get better in this reflective place, and the way for more people to learn, is to not advertise the negatives. An example of this in schools, there's a lot of focus on schools. To give me education, I'll change the structure a little bit and it'll be amazing, right? But what we do is we tell kids about, well, this could happen, that could happen, and what people are doing is they're pushing the negative experience on the young people who don't have that experience. They might not have known about that experience, they might not have known about that in their life, right? You just generated these thoughts that are scary, right? So what you're doing is you're manifesting, right? You're duplicating, right? Negative experiences. No. This is under the guise of prevention, right? It doesn't. It's a trick, right? You generate fear. It's like on the news, right? Somebody gets robbed in another country or something happens, you hear about it on the news. They tell everybody, right? And then everybody gets scared, and then it's like, oh, you can't go out because this is happening, and it's like, well, no, actually, it's in another country, and it's not. You know, there used to be a day when it was sort of local news and it wasn't all negative. So the way to do it, and I found this, I had results of this works. I've done this for years, right? Change the structure within a school, and it's about how you give information, right? And what you do is you present the positives, you reinforce the positive behaviours, right? Really good, yeah? And what you do is you tackle the negatives as they come up on an individual basis by people who don't just follow a process. This is really important because if you're dealing with people, you need people who understand people and who are good with people and who understand this, right? That you, when you're dealing with people, you can't have this equals this. It works on a really thin um, a thin band. It's a small percentage, very small percentage that actually has any impact, right? What happens is if you have a negative, you need somebody who understands how that negative impacts the person who's done it, the person who, or people, or situation it's been done to, within, right? You also need them to look at the history of the person, right? Or people, or who's done it, who's added the negative. You also then need to look at their life and what's available to you to be able to present a really simple, right, way of allowing that person to add positives, right? If you take this into a sort of a prison and adult sense, right? That if somebody's committed a crime, added a negative, right? What we do is we punish them, lock them up, right? Whereas actually, you need somebody who can do the complicated and give a simple way, right, to allow that person to add a reflective positive. So if they've done, it needs to be the opposite of what they've done. So if they've hurt somebody, they need to heal somebody, right? If they don't know how to, it could be mentally, emotionally, physically, and if they don't know how to do that, then they need to be shown, they need to be taught how to do that. It needs to be an appropriate opportunity to add a positive on the other side of whatever the negative has been. So you need somebody who's really good at that. There's far too many laws that say this equals this. Right? It doesn't. Not when you're working with people. People's lives just don't work like that. If they did, they would be already robots and process. Not, don't work like that. It's really important. The people that you have in positions of support, and this is the thing, right? If you think you're in power, if you think you're a boss, right? If you think I'm the judge of you, I'm the, you're not, right? The judge is there and decides what happens to you when they look at the eternal register of you having been in the reflective place and how much you've learned, right? All you've done is just boss other people about, try and punish other people, thinking you've got power. You'll have added far more negatives than you would ever realise, and you're going to be in the, you get sent back to the reflective place in a whole different situation. It's going to be quite challenging. It's another area entirely. The simple is stop advertising the negatives, stop duplicating negatives. right? Stop scaring people when you think you're just helping them by telling them. If you see a negative, give the opportunity to add a positive. This is it's simple. It's really simple. There are changes that can be made that are going to make so many lives better, right? It's really cool, really. It is. And I know it works because I've been doing it for years, and it's the same sort of attitude I have with my children and the thousands of children and teachers and parents and that I've worked with, right? And the negatives often used. Here's some good stories. If you work in school, don't criticise, right? What's a critter? What's your understanding of what a critter is? Right, well, like you criticise, right? You're creating, right? A little critter. What do you want to create? A lot of people who want to help and want to teach and things, you want to support people. You're not there to boss. You're not there to punish, right? All that comes when they register these big registers read. Alright? Positives. If you work in school, then give praise. That's why praise, praise the Lord. Give praise. Give thanks. Thank you. Right? Really well done. You will see a massive change around. Right? Some really simple things. The less said, I'm one to speak. I can talk a lot. I really appreciate quiet time and silence of the things that are said simply. People generally know what they're doing if it's negative behaviour. If you feed a negative, you're just going to make it bigger. So advertise the positives. Don't advertise the negatives. Tackle the negatives as and when they arise. People who know people and are good with people and who don't overly criticise, you can recognise without criticise in. Regards adults and society, more positive news. Less control. Trust people. Prison systems. It's a system. That's why it's called a prison system. The system is a process. The process is where A leads to B and there's no other options. Right? Just because it's written that way, you write a process, you write programs, you write. Doesn't always mean that that's the right answer. Doesn't mean it's going to have a positive result. It should be prisons. It should be places of learning, right? Corrective, and that's even if you have to be getting into other things, and right. So it's all people based. Alright? Process has its place, right? You have to understand that one thing leads to something else, right? But when process outweighs knowledge, right? Process and knowledge, right? There's a whole thing about the silent K, right? process of knowledge. Right, so there we go. If you have any questions, right, then I'm not sure, because however complicated you think life is, however complicated you think the situation is or whatever you're dealing with, my thing is I take the universe, I take the big, and I find a way through it for people to understand, to be able to find balance in their life. Now, that's the same way whether you're dealing with one person, whether you're dealing with a million. It really is. You might think, well, no, it's much more complicated. It's not. It's simple. You just need to be able to relay the information. Most people know, they go, yeah, brilliant. It's under the pressure, right, of systems that want you to walk the thin line of process, right? There's the line, right? Here's the width of sort of the range of society, right? It wants to sort of bottleneck you there. And then there's this pressure, right? But eventually, here goes back out again, right? Oh, we're talking whiskers, bow tie, right? Envelope, stamp. Yeah, so it's have the perception to be able to take the entirety and have a nice simple process. See, process has its place, you have to have, this leads to that, right? It's just when it outweighs it, then, you know, something's getting squeezed, and it's people who are getting squeezed at the minute, right? So if you've got any question, but advertise the positives, don't be duped by duplicating the negatives. If there's a negative situation, keep it to yourself, right? Deal with it. If you can't deal with it, find something that helps deal with that situation, right? When they say it's good to share, right? Well, it's not, really. Well, not if you're duplicating the negative. No. There are ways available, right, to be able, right, to deal with what you're dealing with. That's why you have to learn. If you tell somebody else, all you're doing is expecting them to give you the answer. I don't give answers. I don't tell people what to do, right? If I can see a way to help people, I'll give them the short-term answer. But as well as giving the short-term answer, you have to give them the tools and the way, the process, to be able to support themselves in the mid-term and the longer term within their own experience. So short-term answers, fair enough, it might help, right? But for mid and long-term life, right, then you need to give people the way, the tools, the processes to be able to support themselves. Right, hope the information's helped. Send me a message if you need help.